So with that, we're going to pivot on. We're going to talk about
the semi-finals.
The first game on Saturday at 9 a.m. Irish time. We are going to be live streaming this one for those of you who want to tune in for that. England against the All Blacks. It's to be reffed by Nigel Owens. To be played in Yokohama. I guess you've built this as rugby's traditional home versus its spiritual one.
Yes, indeed. No prizes for guessing which is which in that one. It's also Northern Hemisphere v Southern Hemisphere, which is a dynamic we have at play in both semi-finals. It's going to be a great contest. They're two great rugby nations, tier 1 all the way, absolutely soaked in tradition. Both of them fancying it because they're in great form now coming into this game. They both dispatched of what could have been a tricky one in terms of both teams had very real living memories of losing to their quarterfinal opponents in recent times, but put them to bed and put in very convincing, dominant displays against them and swatted them aside. So they're both carrying quite a lot of momentum. Both of them missed their final pool game. They were 2 of the cancelled pool games, so they're coming in slightly more primed, I suppose, more rested, more time kind of adjusting on the training park. So it's interesting. The intangibles are all kind of married together, and now we just have to decide who are the better team, who is the better team. We don't quite know.
Yeah, it's tough from England's perspective in terms of how you take on what is this awesome All Black team. They've got to stick to what they're good at, I guess, and I'm sure that's what the message is from Eddie Jones in terms of their attacking footy. Getting their carry game going up front is going to be massive for them,
for sure.
But just mixing it up, I mean, it's that sort of brutal combination of their shape and their variety and their power and their speed, dynamism and their Owen Farrellism. They can just like that mix has been what they've done so great. They're playing a very sophisticated, very modern form of rugby. They have moved Farrell to 12 for this game. They have brought Ford back in and Tuilagi back to 13. They would expect to see Tuilagi getting involved quite a bit,
for sure.
But it's just the shape that they want to bring. They can move it wide and run around the All Black wingers, but they're going to be running in loads of different variations on that same screen formation, which is just giving options between a couple of hit-up runners who are really strong, really dynamic ball-carrying players
ignore them,
who can pass to each other or offload to each other. And then the alternative is just to flash it out wide where there's possibly another screen waiting a little wider. They move it around very good, and if you shoot up to try and shut that down, they'll kick it in behind you.
Exactly.
So it's just mixing it up and reading the game and playing to sort of Farrell's strengths from a distribution point of view, and then just going where the All Blacks aren't. It's like they can put pressure on this All Black team, there's no question, because they're just from all of their strike runners, like the guys who are going to be put into narrow channels are all brutally brilliant carriers. Billy Vunipola, Manu Tuilagi,
Maro Itoje,
Jamie George, like those guys can
Curry
do damage.
Underhill do decent carry games as well. Like they'd be slotting into most teams. It'll be a tough challenge for the All Blacks to try and stop them. But it's the key is kind of speed, and you can see that in their halfback choices. They've either Youngs or Willie Hines. They want to move it at a clip and get those phases rolling into each other, and one runner after another, and just waves breaking on the shore kind of thing. They're very, very powerful when they get that momentum going. But when that rhythm is slightly upset, that's when the shape and some of their verve and dynamism kind of diminishes somewhat when they are stymied in that. We can
that said, they were just on half time, and after half time when the Wallabies got that try to bring it into a 1-point game, you could have argued that England were rattled a bit.
To be rattled,
and in the 4-year cycle we've seen evidence of England not responding well to that, not being able to get back into the game. Guys like Kyle Sinclair, who was one of the guys under pressure, losing the head and things going wrong, and yet actually what happened was Kyle Sinclair bounced back, was put into a space for a beautiful try by Owen Farrell, and scored it and played a real stormer of a game and actually got back on top of the scrum.
I think that was what turned his head. That's what pivoted his mood from I'm about to punch someone in the face because I'm annoyed I'm getting much of scrum time to hey, a try for me, yay, I'm happy now. And then next thing that happens is he monsters a scrum.
But it was great to see that fight back from England, and it's perhaps a sign of this team finally being ready.
They're they definitely have confidence in themselves, and confidence is so key in terms of it's going to be a telling factor in the winning of this game as well as all the other ones. where their heads are at, and they definitely believe that when Farrell's are on the pitch, when they're winning collisions, they're all running off them. They can pick any team apart.
They're a very tough side. If they can limit their mistakes and just play that accurate, sharp game with that attacking framework that they have, they're a very, very tough team to stop when they get the ball in your half.
Yeah.
And they actually tend to have quite a few clever ways of getting the picture that they want to paint, getting them to have front football in your half.
Yeah.
And it comes from the restarts. You saw them do it in Dublin at the very first, from the very first whistle of the very first game of their year this year. They executed that against Ireland and ended up scoring an early try.
Yeah.
And you saw them do that consistently against Australia, where Farrell was just kicking inch perfect restarts. They were being chased up often by Underhill, or by Watson
or Curry sometimes, but I think it was mainly Underhill.
On that right wing side, Farrell was just getting perfect air on his restarts and landing it deep in the Wallaby 22, and then being met with physicality almost on the catch.
Yeah.
And then the Wallabies were trying to hit up and exit, but really, even if the Wallabies executed to a T, the most they were able to do would be give England a line out on maybe their 10.
Yeah.
And that's what England want. They want that perfect platform to launch an attack and to put your side instantly under pressure.
Yes.
And that was brilliant.
Yeah.
That was absolutely brilliant. And in terms of the All Blacks getting some momentum and getting those 2 back-to-back scores that they really do love to do to put teams to the sword, I'm very curious to see. That's going to be an area that England are going to look to stop. It was something that prevented them from melting down against Australia, is that every time Australia scored, they said, right, we'll reset, we'll pin them down in their half and apply pressure using our D.
Yeah.
And then that ultimately got them the ball and got them some attacking
100%.
opportunity to score tries. And the All Blacks are a great side, but whether they can work their way around that, if England do it accurately,
it's true.
Is a good question.
It's a good question. Both of these sides are very technical off all set piece, but particularly restarts as well. There's a lot of subtlety to their exit game and their restart game. And England will be trying to apply that pressure and that physicality from the off. In terms of defence, then they will be pressing forward, same as they have, probably bringing a little bit of line speed to try and upset the All Blacks as well, but mainly physicality. Even though they have 2 gifted poachers in Curry and Underhill on the team, that's not normally where they like to compete. They like to bring line speed and smash you back behind the gain line, and then try and, if the turnovers are to be gathered, it's just by getting being there first there to resource a ruck because you've caught them cold 5 metres behind the gain line, and now you're just flooding in, and it's all very overwhelming. When England are on top of you, it's overwhelming. It can be just bludgeoning and very, very difficult to stop. And they're going to try and influence that the game with some of that defence. The option of Ford Farrell leaves them probably slightly weaker in the midfield defensive area, but
they definitely adjusted that last week to accommodate for the Karevi thing. They are running the risk of diminishing the influence of Farrell by not having him be 10 and run the offence. I definitely think.
I know I prefer seeing Faz at 10 to that option, but that's not to say it's not a legitimate option. They still play very, very high level rugby. They just tend to play a bit wider, which may be a tactical thing here as well. They do tend to get wider quicker.
But there's no question from a defensive point of view that the winning picture for England involves winning the physical battle, winning the collisions, not allowing the likes of Artie Savea and Kieran Reid to put any footwork on the ball and get their hands free like they were doing against Ireland, just regardless of how quick they let the ball be at the breakdown, because they're just winning those collisions and smashing them back. And I think that's where Eddie Jones will go
for sure.
But as you say, when you don't compete at the breakdown from a defensive perspective, the sheer pace that Aaron Smith and the All Blacks are going to put on the ball is going to test any defense.
Variety. This is the thing. You can come up all guns blazing to smash Brodie Retallick, but he will tip it on, and put an unlikely candidate through the hole as well. Sometimes, the All Blacks will bring deceptive kind of plays and shapes that will try and get around and through this English pressure game, and we've seen that happen sometimes because they bring such a furious speed off the line. Their line can be fragmented, and it does take a really clutch clutch passing game and an accurate one to pick that apart. But the All Blacks don't need a Finn Russell. They have 1 to 23 all are very capable passers.
Dane Coles can do it.
So
there's no question they can mix it up quite well. But I think if England's best picture is if they can sort of swarm the All Blacks with their loose forwards. I mean, they have. I actually count them as having 5 loose forwards because Courtney Laws and
Toji.
and the Toji in that row are practically, they're so dynamic around the park as well themselves. So just winning those contacts with them, and then on the Underhill Curry dynamic, and then Billy Vunipola, if those guys can start dominating their opposite numbers with sort of better footwork, more physicality, more aggression on both sides of the ball, that's a winning picture for them.
For sure.
Like if you can see the momentum of those narrow channels going one side or the other, that could go a long way to winning the game for
Definitely. That is one of their key winning pictures. And I think shy of that, that's when you'll start to see the All Blacks getting some more stuff off. If you see them floundering a little bit on defence, especially in terms of the reads, because like the All Blacks will probably put a little bit more depth on it than they're used to in the Northern Hemisphere for sure, and try and get around them a little bit. But also their pod systems within the All Blacks are so excellent because their forwards are all legitimate passing options, and they do it with a bit of subtlety. There's no sense of them getting a ball as part of a pod, and like if they're going to pass it, just like telegraphing it like that. It's not like that. It's just going to be like they'll fix, they'll give, or they'll fix, and if you drift off, they'll go. They have all the tools to unpick it. But definitely, I think England are the more physical side, and will be trying to impose that game on them. And we've seen some of that blitz when brought with proper fury and ferocity. It can upset the All Black rhythm, so that they're right to stick to their guns in that regard. And they
just have to be
them.
sure of themselves in terms of their discipline,
yes,
in terms of not giving away penalties, minding their onsides, minding their tackle height,
all of that,
keeping things as technical as they can be, and then also just being mindful to not shoot the wingers up, because actually Aaron Smith's kicking game has been pretty flawless.
Awesome,
so has Mo'unga's in terms of just pegging the corners over wingers' heads. I mean they've done that to really great efficacy pretty much for the whole tournament. The All Blacks. So it's a mouth-watering challenge. In terms of the set piece, there's I think the scrum, I think it's curious.
England are definitely the more aggressive scrummagers. The All Blacks have a wonderful scrum, but they only really want to keep it solid. They don't particularly want to scrum for penalties at all, unless they get a sense that you're wilting. And then they might try through.
Not even like
but normally not. Yeah, they just want to play off it, because
play.
You have Aaron Smith at 9. Like there's no worries about it. You can just flick it off the bottom and get really good quick ball. And then when you have a strike runner of the calibre of Barrett in the wide channel, you just want him one-on-one with anyone in that kind of setup, especially off scrum, and that's a perfect opportunity. Whereas England, with the likes of Sinclair on the pitch and Mako as well, and even Marler off the bench and stuff, they will want to try and be aggressive at scrum time. They back their engine room, they have some seriously powerful locks and some powerful scrummaging props as well. They'll want to be getting stuck in and making that messy for the All Blacks and try and make it dominant for themselves. Whether they'll be able to do that or not, I don't know, because I think the All Blacks are subtly very, very good at locking it down.
They are. They do. They don't tend to be marauded. Like even against the box will put some pressure on them, but they tend to hold their own.
Yeah.
And you could see a similar picture this week. But that said, Mako and Sinclair
are awesome in that area.
Yeah, and they might be the best out there. So it's.
I don't think we'll see as ferocious a picture at scrum time, unless England and the box are the ones that make it to the final. I don't think you'll see quite as ferocious a picture as we saw with England and Australia.
No,
in terms of CEO and Sinclair just going hell for leather at it, and
the whole scrum
really kind of pulsating the whole time. And it's I don't know if we'll see anything like that this time. Like you say, I think England will be the ones trying to bring the squeeze. But I think the All Blacks will be annoying them by holding them off.
Maybe.
And then both are super efficient off restart and super efficient at line out.
Well, the line out battle is extraordinary. Obviously, the All Blacks going with Scott Barrett at 6, so they got 3
lock options,
really class locks: Brian Retallick, Whitelock, and Barrett, and then even Kieran Reid can play in the line out. Artie Safe can play in the line out. I mean, that fivesome in terms of jumping in the air is unreal. And then you're talking like going up against Maro Itoje and Courtney Laws. It's a very great battle. I wonder, will the All Blacks attack them? Will Brodie Retallick's reads have been great?
He has a great game for that. We haven't seen enough of him really in this tournament because he's been kind of wrapped in cotton wool, getting better for it. But when he's at his best, he can jump at 2 or 4 and really make things unpleasant for an opposition line out. And their maul defence has much improved through it. Well, I think it's much better when Brodie Retallick's on the pitch anyway, because he's one of the more effective spoilers of it by doing that little front crawl through the maul kind of thing.
He literally pioneered that technique.
Because he has the arms for it. You need long, good, disruptive arms in that game, and he has them. And if you have 3 locks in there as well, it can be very good, a good way of spoiling that. Now, that being said, England have been very efficient at getting it to the back, and they do tend to mind the pill. You rarely see Ben Youngs like screaming at the back line while the ball's getting spoiled in the maul. You don't tend to see that. They'll have hands on.
They have two eyes for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great clash. You would expect if someone gets on top, it could be a big picture. But for the most part, you're expecting. I kind
of see parity in this in most areas. The English restart game is one that you flagged rightly, and it'll be interesting to see what variations the All Blacks will have in terms of their planned exits, because that England do try and bring the pressure through the kickoff.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. Will they be brave enough to go wide,
maybe
off the restart? Because that is something that England painted so well against the Wallabies. If they can do something similar to that, they really can't trap teams.
Yeah,
but unless they're super brave and flawless.
The All Blacks tend to be both a lot of the time.
Yeah, but they don't run an awful lot from their own goal line.
Not typically, but if they sniff an opportunity, if England don't resource that wide area, I'd back the All Blacks between Barrett and Moanga to call that and let's go. They do back their skills. So I suppose we'll pivot onto them then as well. The All Blacks have a few attacking shapes of their own.
Yeah.
It doesn't all just have to be running out of their own 22, but one of the things they want to use is tempo, and as well as depth, but tempo and just kind of variety too, to just pull the English line, keep them honest, but pull them left and right. Use Smith off the fringes to get your big runners, your Surveyors, your Retallicks, your even Barris as well off the short balls off 9. And then try and get Barrett Moanga into the game early and often, so that they get warm.
Like if you listen to how Kiwi guys and ex-players talk about it, it's just from their perspective in terms of getting their attacking game right. It's just about being themselves, trusting themselves to do what they've done, and where they had been in the run up to this tournament, we had flagged them as a potential. As potentially losing their way in terms of seeing that. They had that Lions tour that really got away from them, and since then they've had bad losses against the Springboks and in Dublin against Ireland, and again this year with that 16-0 draw against the Boks and then the Bledisloe 1 defeat. You were kind of seeing a slower, more.
You saw that the last time they played this England team was that November as well.
Yeah,
it was more laboured.
Yeah, it was more. Yeah, exactly, more structured and less playing with that instinct. And then really since Bledisloe 2, they've got it 100% spot on, and they're all playing with a confidence and a hunger that's great, and that just does give them license to mix it up. I mean, they're just going to back the intellect of their halfbacks and their Barrett to sort of move the game where it needs to be moved. You hit it up when England aren't resourcing those narrow channels that well. You give the ball to the likes of Retallick, he's going to draw man and tip on pass. But then if the game is there blind and it's just Dane Cole's there, you'll give him the ball and run off him. They're just going to go where the English defence are, and to mix it up, tire them out, move it from side to side and probe for weaknesses. They brought that little variation against the Springbok blitz that was shutting them down, of doing a little crossfield kick to Sever Reece that got them a try. But absolutely, they're not going to be afraid to kick if kicking is the option. If England are coming up flat and hard and they can't get inside
they
them.
like a little, even if a flat kick or a deep kick. This is the great thing about Moanga's game, is he's a lovely kicker for football and he reads it very well. So they
just think of themselves as having the best attacking players in the world, and they might be right, and the most intelligent attacking players in the world. So they're just going to play what's in front of them. What picture England present in defence they're going to take on and try and expose its weaknesses, go where the space is, and back who's there to execute. And then, off turnover ball, you get the likes of Bowden Barrett in space, you get the likes of Sever Reece in space. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for England to handle, and
for sure.
I've actually liked the picture of Sonny Bill coming on off the bench and breaking things up as well, and I'm curious to see how early they bring him on, especially if things aren't going that well in that centre partnership, which has been playing well.
Indeed,
I've enjoyed the performances of Goodhue. Actually, he's
stepped up quite a lot, and actually Leonard Brown. I've really enjoyed Leonard Brown this tournament. I think he's fantastic. I always thought he's a fantastic player and with oodles of potential, and it's nice to see him fulfilling that. But you're right, having an option like that off the bench to break it up, especially with England opting for the forward Farrell axis as well. That feels like Sonny Bill would love running into the channel like that and getting his hands free. So there's definitely avenues for success all around it. But it does. A lot of it will come down to the physicality as well. They need to be up to that physical pitch, because when they lose to England, which is not that often, but what tends to be the picture is that they just get a little bit shocked by what physicality they can bring, and that can upset all of that rhythm, just knock it slightly off to the left, and then
so they have to be up to the tempo of that game. But guys like Retallick and Savea are going to have big games. They're going to have to be put by Smith and by each other into proper holes running at soft shoulders.
Yes.
And getting that momentum going.
And
then once they get
over
the gain line, you can talk about offloads and hands free, but then just quick ball for Aaron Smith. England's defence has to retreat, and if they don't retreat, they're giving away penalties.
Indeed.
And that's the picture that New Zealand want to paint.
Because as soon as you start putting that pressure, get that speed going, finding some soft shoulders, that's when this England team do leak penalties. Their discipline kind of collectively goes a bit ragged. They get ragged as you're pressured, which all teams do. But discipline is one that's still a bit of a bugbear for them. So if you can get that All Black pressure going, if they can get a bit of verve into their game and a bit of tempo into their game, as well as get some offloads that are sticking and cause some bamboozling pictures, I do expect then that the English discipline will not hold, and the All Blacks will be just played in more. If they can start to get that going, that's when momentum will really be telling, because one thing can befall another, and then before you know it, the All Blacks are on top of you, and it's very,
and that's
very
what they will do.
That.
If they rattle England for any length of time, they will put points on them.
100%.
There's no question.
There's no question of that.
In terms of the other side of the ball, England are playing with a really difficult shape to stop. In terms of those centres, Goodhue and Leonard Brown, not one real quality shooter defender in there. They tend to drift a little bit and stick their tackles. But what England are bringing with that combination of just loads and loads of different variation on screen formations, where you're having either a brutal runner running between two defenders, ball carrying, or shipping it wide to another distributor, all the way, and then if you rush up, they'll kick it in behind you. They vary their offense very well themselves.
They do.
It's a lot more structured than what the All Blacks do.
More big power runners off like 3 or 4 options off Faz. It's tough.
It's a dangerous matchup for the All Black defence. It is,
particularly those centres, because as great as they are linking going forward, when they can get their verve going with ball in hand, yes, they can cut any team to ribbons. But there's a lot of responsibility on the centres in terms of shooting and shutting that down. And we saw in the game against Ireland in the first game of the season how those like Aki and Ringrose, I think it were absolutely sat down by Tuilagi all game long, because you just can't ignore him, because he's such a big, powerful runner. You can probably feel him eating up the ground as he's coming towards you. He's that powerful, and it's like all of that just opens space out wide. If you're both going to bite in on him, then the option is out wide, and then there are devastating runners there as well. So it's very much like what Saracens are bringing: multiple screens in the back line, powerful runners in every screen that you just can't ignore. Exactly. And it's like a perfect little... the Sinclair try actually from last week was a great little picture of that, where it was like, I think it was a Toji off a wraparound off Faz.
Toji was running a little switch play. Billy Vunipola was running a short
just outside him, and then so the two defenders naturally sat down on those two monsters like you have to, and then out it goes to the tight head prop, perceived as the weaker of the 3 threats in a running game, but he's in enough space and enough time to run it in for the try, and that's the English picture that they're trying to bring. The All Blacks will be ready for it, but it's a tough one. You need to go low, you need to stick your tackle, you need to make very good reads, and you need to be physically there all game long.
You need to be stymieing them in terms of getting go forward in the narrow channels, then maintaining sort of your disciplined defensive, almost like playing a bit like Uruguay in terms of defense at a lower level, but just keeping your heads about you, nobody shooting out of line, everybody focus on consistently making those tackles and then sticking those tackles. But you do have to execute against an awesome England team.
For sure. You also, I think you do have to slow them up. It's something we've seen a bit with Sevilla. He's good at getting the hands in there, but like the team that have stopped this Eddie Jones England side with the most regularity even in the 4 years, but also the most effectiveness this year, has been Wales. And a big part of that is the fact that England do love getting that 2 second ruck game, 1 second ruck game going, and because their halfback is a little pacey guy who's just delegating straight out to the 10 where the real decisions get made, and we play off 10 a lot more often. And if you can even create 4 or 5 second rucks in those windows when England are looking for 2 second ones, that means that they just have to check their run enough that suddenly those shapes aren't quite as devastating.
In the absence of Sam Cane, it's hard to see them going that way. I think they went for Barrett and they did, and Savia, just to try and be physical to stop them. And obviously getting your hands on the pill, trying to spoil it is going to be huge. But I actually think another area that's going to be huge in terms of deciding ultimately where we'll go now as to who's going to win the game is actually just that English kicking game versus the backfield coverage of Beauden Barrett.
This is true.
Like Beauden Barrett for me is the best fullback in the world, and one of the many reasons why is because of his ability to cover the backfield. He's incredible at it. He's got such pace, and he shuts down offensive kicks better than anybody I've ever seen.
Even like Rob Kearney's tremendous at that just from his reads, and he gets a lot of credit, but he doesn't have that pace, that out and out pace that Bowden has,
Yeah.
where you just like, you'll kick what is an excellent kick and the right option at the time. It doesn't matter because Bowden's there with like 5 seconds to get a kick off or run it back at you, because he's also got that intellect where he's going to read where the kick's going to go. But then the pace, such pace. And then also his last-ditch tackling is tremendous as well. He has some great hold-up plays in him that I've seen in Super Rugby down through the years, where he's last man in, gets a little wrap up and manages to hold you up even though he has no right to do it. Yeah, he's just a very consummate, well-rounded footballer and a really dangerous threat at 15.
Yeah, and so that contest of England's offensive kicking game, which they go to so often for Johnny May tries and the like, versus that Barrett coverage is just, who's going to get the better of that clash is just an incredible question. Who's going to get more on offense? I actually like the matchup for both offenses. And yet strangely you almost feel like it is going to be a low scoring one.
Yeah.
Maybe nerves will kick in. Whoever holds their nerve might have a better job. But certainly if England can get on top of them early, that is England's picture, because the All Blacks do just have a way of them when the games get narrow of finding the tries.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like they did against the Springboks in the opening day, of just finding those scores to push the game away from their opponent.
Yeah.
But if they get put under a bit of pressure and brought behind in the game, that's the picture. So England need to start ferociously and need to start early, and if they do that, if they can get their restart game pinning the All Blacks back and then getting good, clean attacking footy off set piece,
and build the lead.
There are tries there for them, and then if they can do that, they can build the lead. So there's definitely potential for an England win here, and there's definitely, the All Blacks are still, I think on balance, the best footballers on the pitch. In the tournament, in the game probably, and probably just have more raw ability to find tries in tight semi-final games than the English do, although England's shape is so sophisticated that it could break the All Blacks down. So it's for me, it's a really tough call.
It's a bit of a toss-up. I know. Yeah. I'm leaning towards the All Blacks, just I haven't seen enough to go against them. When I picked my picture pre-tournament, I was going like, oh, maybe Ireland might like to see them in a quarter-final, but that was contingent on them losing to the Springboks in the first weekend and us topping our group and then maybe getting a slightly short of confidence one. I haven't seen that. I think I've actually seen the All Blacks steadily improve from Bledisloe 2 right the way up through this tournament, and I think they're pretty well primed. So I think they will see this one out in what I expect to be a brutal but awesome game, because I think they are two tremendous teams with so many world-class operators. Barrett and Farrell on the same pitch at the same time is awesome in many ways. Loads of little subtext and great little battles going on. I'm leaning towards the All Blacks by around 7 to 6 or 7 points.
Well, I am going to say England.
Then.
England, catch them early, get a few tries on board, use that brilliant attacking shape, pin them back, and then the All Blacks to come back a little bit,
but not have enough time.
And so England,
definitely in picture
by about 7.
Yeah, there you go. It's that close, and it's that good.
The predictions aren't that important. We don't really know what's going to happen. There's so many different dynamics that could go off and happen in this game.
For sure.
That's what makes it so damn fun. So join us on Saturday.
Saturday morning. Yes, as we'll be live streaming our kind of commentary. I guess our second screen buzz for that one. If you're keen to join,
absolutely. Thanks so much for tuning into the Overlap Rugby Podcast's World Cup content. If you enjoyed that video, please feel free to subscribe and comment down below, as well as share with your friends. Thanks.